Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the COMIT Happy Hour. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is the only place on a Friday afternoon for a friendly chat over hot topics, including a beer. Before we get into the session, I firstly want to introduce COMIT. COMIT is a community. It's made up of owners, contractors, solution providers, and academics. COMIT has a history of developing and running projects, webinars, and events with a focus on increasing productivity for better outcome. Often the best improvements come from a combination of knowledge, people, the process, and the technology. And by being collaborative with all of the stakeholders, we create value and enablement through process improvement and by setting up and delivering demonstration projects. I will try to keep the acronyms to a minimum. In construction, we have lots, and we have lots of new ones that appear every week. There are many aspects to consider. COMIT gets the message across through its community days, peer-to-peer collaboration. We have 4 of those a year. We run regular webinars, I just mentioned that. We run projects. There's no better way to early adoption than practically proving it in the field. We have a drone community that started life as a project and is now a working community with its own events and website. We partner with other organisations, and I mentioned about events. We have a conference coming up in May next year. On the webinar front, we do these every 4 weeks. This is a sample of some from the early part of the year. Projects, we have a Commit to 5G project. And there's the Commit to Drones project. Okay, so I'm just going to mention today's session. It's entitled Legacy Estates, beginning the journey on a digital capture to help manage and plan their existing estates better and gain a foundation for incorporating future tech. The panel session that I'll introduce you to in a second will provide insight into their routes of estate capture and digital adoption, ranging from housing associations to NHS estate owners. And there'll be an opportunity to send questions in, so don't hold back to the end. Fire them in as you see. I want to reach out and say thank you very much for everybody that participated in the questions at registration. I won't go into those now. I'll leave those at the end, and we can dissect those and respond accordingly. But first, before I hand over to Matt, I want to introduce the panel. And we've got Matt on the left-hand side. I'll try go left to right. We've got Matt. Matt has run a BIM outsourcing company for almost 15 years with a focus on MEP deliverables for estates ranging from healthcare to residential. For the last 2 years, he's been running Site Desk, which provides a way of hosting digital captures of estate and associated data. Then we've got Graham. Graham runs his own consultancy, providing valuable experience from his previous positions in the same role at companies such as Kia, Balfour Beatty, and Carillion. Working for these companies provided him an understanding of the challenges facing the built environment and its management. Then we've got Kieran. Kieran has worked in construction and estates maintenance since 2009. Background includes direct maintenance, BMS engineering, and his current senior management role. He's passionate about IoT and digitalisation of estates to reduce maintenance and energy costs. Then we have Anthony. Anthony works for Halton Housing, who are a housing authority managing over 7,000 properties across Cheshire and the northwest of England. Halton Housing are a leading player in prop tech adoption within the housing market and have a strong focus on building safety management using digital methods to meet these demands. Then we have Paul. Paul is a lead partner for a group of companies with Smart Enterprise Asset Management SEAM, integrated system that allows modular scale cost-effective approach to an estate's adoption of digital solutions. Then we have Omar. Omar draws upon his experience, his extensive BIM experience to support the UK's largest distributor of plumbing and heating equipment, and understands and create the services in their client adoption. These include services such as direct library, portal to point cloud scan and asset capture surveys for estates. Welcome, gentlemen. I'm now going to hand you over to Matt, who's going to take you through the presentation. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I appreciate that. Thanks for the lead in there. And welcome all. Hope you're enjoying your nice Friday afternoon, even if it isn't possibly damp as it is up in the north of the country. And looking forward to walking home later. So yes, so myself and Graham are just going to take you through a quick presentation from our side, and then I'll let the rest of the panel go through a similar presentation in regards to their own aspects. But leading on. So yeah, Graham, if you can crack on.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So afternoon, everybody. So why are we having the panel discussion on the capture of legacy assets? We all live, work and play in legacy estates, yet from a digitalisation perspective, most of the focus seems to be on new builds. I think from an existing building perspective, most of these buildings are through the operational stage of the life cycle and are typically using asset management processes and systems that are paper-based and effectively need transforming to meet the needs of a digital future. I think it's probably common across most sectors, whether that's housing, corporate or utilities, that asset managers don't often know the assets that they own and the condition of these assets. And that's primarily down to decades of minor works, emergency works, utilisation legacy systems, contractor involvement. And so moving towards a digital capture of estates, I think creates an opportunity to log what we currently have and plan next steps and collaborate with partners. So regarding new builds, we found, especially in MEP delivery, that main contractors are leading the conversation on asset information and management requirements. And this has led us to realise that often asset owners don't know what their digital needs are, as they've never been asked to or given the opportunity to manage their estate digitally before. And with the recent adoption of BIM and the full implementation into industry in 2016, many asset owners are really just receiving this asset information through that platform. So, so the digital adoption of legacy assets really should give asset owners a better insight into the future needs and enable improved decision making, budget allocation and compliance. But critically, we need the data to get the answers. Often we're unable to resolve problems if we don't have the information at hand to develop the solution. And given many of the macroeconomic challenges that we have, and specifically the drive towards carbon net zero, we really need to improve our understanding on how to tackle the issues. Now, digital twin is a common phrase that we recognise across all sectors in which we operate, and this is the point where data is fed from the real world into the digital world and back again. But I think without digital, there's really little opportunity for new technologies to be implemented as they come into industry and into our sectors. So I'm going to pass back to Matt now, who's going to talk to us about digital logbooks. Thanks, Matt.
That's great. So, in regards to the sort of digital logbook aspect, how do we go about creating it? So we have our kind of a sort of opinion side of things. So my career in particular has been about engaging with the built environment using a 3D space, whether it's sort of BIM or 3D models. But I appreciate that isn't the actual whole thing in regards to BIM and certainly asset management. But as humans, we're used to engaging in a 3D environment, and the capture allows us to engage in spaces digitally in a relatable way. So reality capture methods are great in capturing a point in time that provides almost all the information you need to carry out condition surveys, building systems, tracing or safety compliance analysis, given that it's the mimic of the reality and lets us engage with the space, desktop or remotely. So what kind of 3D space should we create for our estate? As always, it's typically down to how much money is available to do this and digital maturity level of the actual owners that are going to engage with it. So some estates have engaged with the belief that they should have a building information model created so that they can follow typical BIM strategies. However, they're pretty costly to implement and typically require a scanner BIM service with a robust asset management system, asset capture survey plan of the legacy assets. which isn't a problem if the funds are there to be able to conduct that. However, alongside that, you generally need a decent developed BIM strategy to develop alongside. It can also be really intrusive in regards to the work in building. So I typically propose a sliding scale for the 3D model of the asset capturing side, depending on cost availability and level of commitment from the asset management team. So on the one side, you've got 2D drawings, which can be used to create a kind of wireframe for that 3D space, stuff you've already got and you can build up from. Photogrammetry scans, really pretty useful nowadays, fairly entry level for mobile phones, especially with systems like Matterport. Point cloud, obviously big fan of it at the moment, especially in regards to data manipulation after. The conversion of them, loads of funky things going on, as we've seen with point views previously. And then there's the data-rich model side, but not quite BIM. Obviously, BIM is a process, but from the BIM process, we can develop initially over time for specific areas. It typically means you have to have the point cloud captured to conduct that, because you're capturing what you have on the state to actually bring it into a more digital-rich model. Now, the other side of things is, well, what about all of them? So estates are very fluid in their maintenance, the building works and the information that they have. This is likely to be an ongoing scenario. It's unrealistic to expect that asset management teams maintain a current data-rich model or build an information model of their whole estate, whether due to the fact that they don't have in-house resources or purely because it isn't needed for their estate. This allows focusing on key areas first, being able to hit the main focus digitalization plan. So not going full BIM, doing steps as we go, bringing the data we do have initially, proving that proof of concept to be able to get onto the next steps. So for instance, over at SiteDesk, we allow multiple type of model interaction within a 3D space, meaning you can build it up as you go, replace areas with new models, focus on specific areas of interest with deeper information, or whatever stretches and pulls to maybe be able to make your implementation plan. So once you've got your digital logbook, what can you do next? So in regards again to our SiteDesk, once you have your 3D space of your estate, you start interacting with that to build up your existing information specific to your requirements and start collating on getting more data from the site as you're going during your maintenance routines. So it's not necessarily a catch-all at first, do it as you go. So once we have our digital logbook though, we can consider our next steps. So we've been, as mentioned, we're part of the ecosystem over at SEAM, which ensures that this logbook can actually engage further than just being a dumb thing as it is. So we are able to allow interface with platforms such as BMS, CAF-FM, IoT, analytics, e-procurement providers, and that all ensures that that logbook then can grow into the digital twin territory, meaning that it's not just a one thing that's stuck there ready to go. We can then look at the next steps on the ladders. So that's my little spiel. So I'm going to hand you over now to Kieran.
Afternoon, everyone. So obviously I'm hopefully going to bring my perspectives as a sort of state manager within the NHS Trust. I met Matt and Omar probably about 6-7 months ago now to look at how we could digitise our estate. And I just want to briefly chat through sort of my strategy for how we're hoping to do that at Northern Lincolnshire and Crowell Foundation Trust. Next slide, please, if that's okay. Thanks. So 3 key estates drivers for myself and our team. The first one, which Matt's already alluded to really, was to build a data-rich environment to inform our strategic decisions. I'm going to chat about them in a moment. Each of these will have its own slide. Second driver we were looking at was to find new ways to drive compliance via building management systems and sort of Internet of Things as well. And then finally, to improve workshop productivity, having the right information in the right place. So they're sort of the 3 key drivers that we're focusing on. Next slide, please. And the first one of those, strategic decision making. We've decided to use SiteDesk, and Matt's helping us with one of our major buildings at Scunthorpe Hospital at the moment, principally to inform condition monitoring. That's one of the main reasons we're wanting to do this, particularly for a lot of the infrastructure that's quite difficult to access above ceilings. So currently, like a lot of estates managers, we use 6-facet surveys. We'd like to use laser scanning to allow us to inform that from a more detailed perspective and with more data to do that. The second strategic decision making area this helps with allows for future savings and project work. So by scanning everything into point cloud in our plant rooms, for instance, when we come to upgrade that plant room, we can make decisions very quickly without bringing contractors in to quote potentially, because we know what every valve and every fitting is in that plant room down to millimeter accuracy. So a lot of discussions, a lot of savings, and ultimately construction work and project for us. We see benefits in that being able to be done off-site, reducing costs. And the third area where I think we'd like to move towards with this is MyCAD and SiteDesk integration together, and myself and Matt have chatted about this and possibly be the direction of travel, where we can tag up assets in SiteDesk and start to build an asset register in that visually, if it can then be transferred across to MyCAD or another CAF FM system online. Next slide, please, Matt. Thanks. So the second area I want to chat about was BMS and IoT, and some of the data we're starting to bring in from that aspect, which is an area I'm quite passionate about, really. So we use a lot of wireless temperature sensors on pipework in our hospital, and like many other estates managers, sometimes you've been told outlets are being flushed, for instance, and you're not 100% sure. Well, we're starting to get data, for instance, here that shows us that outlets are or aren't being flushed on a daily basis. And the beauty of these sensors is we can roll these wireless sensors out on pipework to basins and showers within about 5 minutes each. And I want to start to incorporate that data back into our digital twin ultimately. And that's where we're heading with our strategy. And then the final slide is to discuss workshop productivity. Apologies for the state of this rather old plant room, or sub-plant room, we should say, within our hospital area. But what I'm trying to show here is we can start to tag up assets, and we're doing this in SiteDesk now already, ready for when we have that integration back to MyCAD to start bringing all of our assets together in MyCAD directly without having to do it all twice. The other thing I really like about SiteDesk is we can attach manuals, etc., to these. So as our workshop team are going around this, looking at it, they can bring up the manuals for something and have that on the laptop on site as well. Workshop productivity is a huge plus selling point for me with this SiteDesk and the point scanning. In common with most older estates, we have a huge lack of drawings and information, and being able to immediately look above a ceiling, for instance, virtually on this results in significant productivity gains. And equally, if you don't have those drawings and information, you're losing man hours essentially in your workshop. I think this drives asset awareness, as I've already mentioned, and it improves workshop knowledge of site and systems as well. So for me, this is something I'm really excited about as the estates manager, and we're working with Omar and Matt, as I say, to push this forward at Scunthorpe and Goole and Grimsby hospitals. Thanks very much.
Hi guys, you all right? So my name's Anthony. I'm an innovation analyst for Halton Housing with a background in IT and social housing. For those who don't know, we're a housing association in the Northwest with over 7,000 homes. If I could just get the next slide there, please, Matt. Thank you very much. So as a landlord, we obviously recognise the importance of BIM technology and digital twin technology as well. And by utilising these, it's enabled us to better understand and manage our assets, and also ensure we comply with things like the Building Safety Bill and working towards goals such as net zero carbon or sustainability. So our digital twin journey really basically starts in 2021. So we partnered with SiteDesk and Leeds Beckett University to work on the SEEDS project, which is Sustainable Ecological Engineering Design for Society. And with this collaboration, we explored the idea of developing a proof of concept BIM system, which would bring together information about assets, so your fire doors, sprinkler systems, dry risers, and basically show the exact location in the building. More importantly, though, we wanted to show links to maintenance cycles, certification, and documentation as well. So in 2022, we started to move some of our assets over into SiteDesk. Matt was very kindly able to get some Revit files for us from previous surveys. And with this, we were able to get some of our staff involved to sort of open it up and understand what the importance is about having that digital twin. So the data within it, really, the ability to group assets, and as Kieran said, manage those assets with data moving forward. So one thing we did after this was, if we can go to the next slide, sorry, Matt, cheers, is we worked with Digital Engineering Works to obtain an internal LiDAR capture of our new office space. So this, as Matt's showing there, held obviously the photogrammetry, the point cloud data, and obviously all the surface measurements. So once we were able to get this model into SiteDesk, we then had a digital twin of the premises we were working at. So with all the data, that gives us a full piece of the puzzle, combining the point cloud, enabled us to make decisions quickly, and also start tagging some of our assets in a 3D space. We could also get measurements and even offer virtual tours for staff and potential clients without leaving our desk, which is fantastic. But more recently, we've been working on our building safety case. So if I could just get the next slide. So we've had a new fire and safety manager who took a real interest in how we can manage fire assets and building safety cases using the digital twin. So Matt was able again to help me get some Revit files from a site survey of a high rise that we own in Runcorn. We were able to get this into SiteDesk, and then working with our health and safety team, we could start actually tagging some of the fire assets into the SiteDesk model. So with that, we could also tag documents, maintenance cycles, certification, as well as pin and group our assets together. And more recently, we've been looking at integrating an asset register into that. We do have a blog on our website, which I'm happy to share with you after it, if you want to read a bit more about that. So in terms of the future of our digital journey, I guess we're looking at continuing working on building safety cases. We're also looking at increasing the digital estate, so getting a good mix of archetypes and being able to understand our properties better. And for me personally, I think it'd be good to integrate some live IoT BMS data so we can get real-time transmissions of how properties perform during different seasons, and obviously include full building and asset life cycles. And so with that, I'll hand over to the next speaker. Thanks very much.
Hello, I hope, can you see me now? Sorry. Yep. So I'm Paul Redmond, as it says there, Paul Redmond, Business Development for SRO Solution, SRO Innovate, I should say. And we are working on, with a bunch of partners, we're developing the Smart Enterprise Asset Management solution, which, as it says there, which is all about digital collaboration across the group of partners that you're now looking at. Thank you, Matt. We recognize that as you look at the whole asset life cycle from design into build through to operate, there's not one single organization that can deliver all those touch points throughout the whole asset life cycle. And so we're strong believers in openness, interoperability across the systems to ensure that golden thread of data. And so the partners that you're looking at, they range from the architects, master planners, through to you've got SiteDesk in there, of course, representing the design. You've got BMS in the operational phase. You've got procurement of spare parts with Unite, etc. So all these partners, the fundamental thinking is we need to work together as part of this open and interoperable platform, making life easier for the customer. We're very much data focused. And so it's that golden thread of data. Some of you don't like the term golden thread, but there is a golden thread of data that goes from that Revit model all the way through to the operational phase and even end of life. That data needs to be, when we start with end in mind, that data needs to be orientated towards business outcomes. So typically what we'll start with is understanding what the business outcomes of the clients are, whether that be around sustainability or productivity or well-being or whatever it is. We understand that data, understand their business outcomes, and ensure that the data right from the beginning of that journey is made available from design and build through to the operational part. Next slide, please. Typically, we're very much focused on the health sector at the minute, but this will work for what we're doing, works very much so for other estates, whether it be in industrial plants or education or whatever. I'd say 9 times out of 10 when we turn up to an NHS estate, it looks like the picture on the left-hand side, which is they've got a bunch of systems that just don't talk to each other. When you've got a bunch of systems that don't talk to each other, they create siloed pockets of data. So we try and move away from that. we try and avoid what's on the right-hand side. I think Graham mentioned it early on. You've got some large organizations out there that try and sell themselves as being all things to all men, and honestly, I don't think it works. There's gaps in their offering, and so therefore, what we try and aim for is fewer systems, but those fewer systems are best in class. They are able to talk to each other, and therefore it facilitates that creation, manipulation, and sharing of data throughout the whole asset lifecycle. So the piece in the middle is basically what CEAM is all about. Bunch of partners, best in class, based on open and interoperable. Next one, please. That's just touching on when we're looking at these systems, going from the 3D model into a CDE, into an asset management, etc. We need to focus on two types of data. That's the static data and the active data. What we call the static data is pretty much found in, for example, a CDE environment, PDF documents, its O&M manuals, etc. It's the stuff that doesn't move that often, but it also needs to, in the operational phase at least, also needs to think about that active live data. So that was just a slide to say that when we're looking at whole asset lifecycle, yes, in the design and build phase, we're thinking about those joined up golden thread using static data. But as we get into the operational phase, we're also very much about the IoT data and connectivity of BMS data. And you've seen some of our partners that we use. Is there another one after that? Nope, that's me done. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Omar. Just a quick introduction to myself. I work for BSS Industrial, but I thought it's quite important to sort of talk very quickly about my background. So my background is construction management. I worked on land lease for Athletes Village, where I manage £50 million worth of construction fit out work on apartments for the Olympics. Also worked as an engineer, working across rail in London, in the Royal Albert Victoria Docks, doing cofferdam works while I was with Vinci for a few years. And more importantly, took that experience where I worked for Lang O'Rourke, Mace, in the digital construction teams in work winning. I then moved to a completely different sector, working with Saint-Gobain, who are leading supplier of construction product materials, where I led a number of digital innovation projects. And I'm now working for, sorry, Matt. I'm now working for BSS Industrial. I'll just a few things about BSS. We're part of Travis Perkins Group, so we've been trading for over 100 years, 60 odd branches up and down the country. We are experts in what we do. We specialise in plumbing, heating, and pipeline solutions. So essentially, all the mechanical services you find in a building, we can supply. We also have a strong technical expertise. We've got a technical support team who handle hundreds and hundreds of inquiries on a monthly basis from any of our 200 and odd suppliers. If you move on, Matt. Obviously, when I started working at BSS, honestly, as a business, we were probably not quite, I'd say, in a nice way, aware of the complexities of the industry. As you see there on the left, and we've all seen graphs, and we've all seen charts, and we've all seen diagrams like this, where you can see the complexity of the industry, the way that information moves around is very complicated. And what generally happens is, we all know, you're getting inaccurate scope data, estimates, costs overrun, products always lasting longer than schedules, material costs going up all the time, especially now. Added to that, one of the things when I started, it's a complexity of what's out there. As we've seen, interoperability is key. Digital technology, it is a complex business. When we're talking about BIM, Industry 4.0, visualization, geospatial, there's a tool for everything. We at the moment there's no answers in terms of this, and my colleague there from Scenes put it very well. It's all about collaboration, integration, and what sort of drove this, I guess, is what I want to talk about next. Is we noticed an increased demand for specialist connected services as part in our business, and these came from clients, they came from subcontractors, consultants, and this essentially led on to our the service we're developing as we talk. We have delivered for clients, including a leading university. We've done some work for MOD and also some work for Kieran's Hospital, North Lincolnshire and Gaul. The service essentially, I like to say, it's almost a 5-phase service, where we got capture, we got advise, we got design, and we got install and manage. I probably won't be able to talk about them all, but one of the important things is what we're doing here. We are using our sector expertise, technical expertise, supply chain, technology, investing in the latest technology, working with Matt and site desk, and with the resources to deliver this, where we're not just becoming product suppliers, distributors. We're also offering services, and these are building existing services that we do around product supply and our technical expertise, but we are delivering surveying, specifications, bin design, and technology, as well as ESG, looking at sustainable solutions across the industry. Now, one of the key aspects around this is, what does that look like? So when we're talking about the capture service, we're delivering on-site site surveys using the latest reality capture and point cloud surveying tools. We're not essentially creating digital twins, at least not yet, but we get digital representation where we physically tag and digitally record all assets and condition survey them. What that gives us and what we provide for our clients is essentially a forecast for the next 5 years, and also through our supply chain product knowledge, we can actually provide product schedule and some pricing as well to help with forward planning. We also got and building on that, sustainable alternatives team who can look at offering alternatives within any infrastructure that can save on energy costs and help towards the road towards net zero. Moving on from that, design phase, so we provide we do the concept design. We take all the data we've already got, enabling us to turn around these designs really quickly and then turn them into BIM models further online and the necessary drawings to build this, and provide the technical and design support and to the client as well as to the potential contractor on the project. For install, we don't really touch install exactly, but what we do is provide installation plans, programs, obviously material sourcing, guarantee availability, on-time delivery, which is our bread and butter. As part of this, as we're doing the design, we also give advice to contractors that are on site and any support they require to deliver that project. Moving forwards into the ongoing management, we've got a digital platform, which is based on site desk, and we're developing further. A digital platform where all that data is fit. I won't say more about site desk. I think we heard quite a bit about what it can do, but in that it'll contain all your data, your one source of truth from the site. So all these services are either being developed, they're ongoing, and it's part of our future roadmap. And one of the important parts of that is, we're not just looking to offer the service as a standalone business. We are integrating, with other areas of the industry, and for example, for maintenance schedules, obviously integrating with SFG20 and so on. So, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Omar. So I think that's back to you now, Stuart. Thank you.
Okay, thanks guys. Thanks Matt for posting the slides there. Fabulous. So we should all be coming back on the screen now. Are we able to do that? Open the cameras up. There we are. There we are. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm just going to put the questions slide on. Everybody see that? Yeah, that's back on now. Great. Okay, my camera's not on for some reason. There we are. Okay, great. So that went really well, guys. Thank you very much. The recording was 100% all the way through, and I'm pretty sure the audience got the same. I have some questions. I did say at the beginning, if the audience wanted to send in some questions, please do. Please keep them coming in. We really like your questions, or we'd really like your questions. First question I've got here is, how easy would it be for estate managers to onboard reality capture methods? Now, based on what I already know, I'm going to go with Kieran first. Kieran, would you like that question?
Yeah, not a problem, Stuart. My perception of it from starting to introduce this in Lincolnshire Rural NHS Foundation Trust is that it's actually quite straightforward to get started. Obviously, you've just got to have a bit of a pot of money to get it going. And also, I think for me, it's been the right team. We had a less successful attempt at starting this, which I won't go into because it wouldn't be professional to. But obviously, Omar and Matt have been exceptional. So I am here to plug them in that respect, because actually, what we're going to end up with is a good site desk walkthrough of one of our major buildings at Scunthorpe, which is about 60 years old, and millimeter accuracy plant room data and point cloud scanning of the whole building, all our undercross and everything. So I think it's really easy to get started, and from my point of view, the beauty of it is that you can either start right back, as Matt said, at 2D drawings potentially, or you can go up in different stages, and we've chosen to start off with point cloud and potentially move to BIM as funds allow. But now we're getting into it, we're realizing actually probably more point cloud information first to build up data around our whole estate, and then we can expand on that with BIM, which, as Matt alluded to, is the very expensive part, time consuming. Hope that answers the question.
Yes. I'm going to come to Anthony now. Anthony, can I ask you the same question? If you'd like me to repeat it, I can.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Stuart. I was just going to say, yeah, like what Kieran said, it's about sort of having a place to start with, really. So from a landlord's perspective, obviously we've got things such as floor plans, which can be easily inputted, and then sort of building that up. I mean, to be honest, like a lot of surveyors of properties these days will have like iPhones, and even the newest iPhones have LiDAR capture. So there's so many different ways you can do it. I think for us, we started small. It was about getting the right data out of it, really. So like it's easy enough to get the actual reality capture done, but it's what you do with that data that I think is quite the hot topic. Whether it's asset compliance, anything like that. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that?
No, all I'll add is that it is easy, but there's a point of where you start and planning it, and really having that long-term vision to start with before you get started is key, really.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. Just before I go on to the next question, Adam Box of Topcon on the call. Adam, I've just sent you a chat. If you could just pick it up, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. Okay, so next question. Should estate managers consider setting up a dedicated server space for their data hosting, or should they leave it to providers like Google Cloud, Azure, or Amazon? Matt, I think you'd like that one. In fact, I'm certain you'd like that one.
Yeah, no, sure, yeah. No, it's an interesting one. It's obviously one that I put up on the lead into the actual event. So I think we're hitting an interesting side culturally, to be honest. It's who owns the data. Obviously, there's commercial aspects for companies to be able to sort of provide that data hosting as a subscription based. One of the other trusts we're kind of working with, they're actually looking at building their own server state in-house, so that they can sort of bring all the data and control it a little bit easier. But it's obviously, it does come down again to sort of money and aspects. And and whether or not you do want to have it held in with somebody else's hands. But I'm interested in the cultural push to see if asset owners actually want to control their data, because that is at the end of the day an asset of theirs, and if they want to control it, or at least own it and be able to control it and release out the information that comes to it. I don't think there's a full answer yet, because when you start getting a lot of data, obviously how do you manage that, and the costs associated to it, bringing in extra resources to manage it. But I think it's going to be an interesting space to watch, whether it is just going to be Microsoft sort of loving it and hosting all that big data, or whether it does become in-house a lot more. So don't think,
Okay.
Has anybody else got anything to add? No.
No, okay. I'm sure this next question will apply to a few of you, but again, I'm going to come back to Matt. Is a 3D model key to a digital twin?
So yes, this is I mean, certainly in BIM, it was always the conversation. Now again, I've always been in the 3D space, and it's how I kind of visualize the construction industry. But I'm totally not so ignorant to believe that it's only that way of doing it. But the data is how we're used to visualizing things. Now, it's okay having the data that's going to tell us something, but how do we see that? So do we want to see the rooms in that building flashing because there's occupancy in there, or the fire alarm BMS system going off, or do we want to just have it on a data element? It's all about, it's okay having data, but if we can't visualize it and to understand it in a reasonable and meaningful way, what's the point? So I do think 3D models are still the kind of key for the interface to the actual digital twin to understand the data that we have. Obviously, it's not everything, but those that aren't used to seeing massive data sheets, I think it's easier for them to involve themselves with that data.
Brilliant. Anybody else?
Paul's got something to add on that.
Yeah, sorry, Stuart. Sorry, Shab. I agree. For me, the twin is just how you surface the data. It's that visualization. It's important because people see it and they can visualize it. But the power of the twin, for me, is the data. It's the underpinning data. So imagine you got a 3D model and you're just looking at it and you just go whoopee-doo. It's not that. It's the data that's behind it. And the way you get your hands on that data is, as I was saying, making sure your data is joined up. So don't have data in your Revit model that doesn't go over to your CDE, that doesn't go over to your asset management solution. Otherwise, and your different types of IoT solutions and your BMS solution, the more data that you can access, surface through your digital twin, the more powerful it's going to be. Then you'll be able to start mixing and matching the data sources and say, okay, now I can visualize it, fantastic, and it's really important, but I can see energy consumption mixed with other data regarding footfall. So why am I heating it if nobody's actually using it? And there's thousands of the more data you've got, the more precise your outcomes are going to be, the more algorithms that you can apply. And yeah, so I'm a big believer. It's about the data. It's surface it through a twin, but it's about the data, and your data's got to be joined up.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to tag on to that, Paul, I thought your presentation struck a chord with me when you were chatting about sometimes it's better to have 2 or 3 different systems that actually all speak to each other, and certainly the direction we're going in for our estate is you've got your up-to-date cloud-based BMS system, BATnet BMS system, and that'll provide you with all the energy data, what's happening with the building, and then we're going to have the 3D point cloud captures separately to that in Site Desk. Down the line we might bring them all together, but I think as you said, Matt, there's not necessarily any point doing that unless it's going to work for you. So having a strategy for how you're going to use the data is probably very important, I feel.
Absolutely. Start with your outcomes. Sorry, Kieran. Start with your what do you want to do? Don't go for a digital twin for the sake of a twin. Don't go for data just because you can get data. What outcomes are you trying to achieve? Once you've understood your outcomes, then you go back down the chain to find out what data do I need to achieve those outcomes. And then you start looking at your systems. Where's that data today? If I haven't got the data today, and can't and extract that data, Matt's point earlier on, if you can't extract it because you don't own the data, well, what have you done there? So it's looking at your systems, it's getting your hands on that data, and then it's about manipulation of that data and surfacing it through the twin. But it starts with your outcome. What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Paul. You know, it's less about BIM, it's less about point clouds. It doesn't really matter. You know, BIM's easier if you're talking about something that's new build. but you know, it's all about how you link that up into a single solution, really, where you can really make use of that data.
Sure, thank you. Anybody else want to comment before I move on to the next question? No, okay. Just to go out to the floor. Oh yes, is that Henry? You've asked a question there. Let me just have a look at that one. You've got, oh yeah, there you go. Okay, guys. I just need to open the whole question up. It's quite a long question. Hang on. There we are. Right. One of you asked the question, what do we do with the digital twin? The answer is we interact with CAFM. We interact with BMS. I presume you mean transferring data into CAFM. My question is, what advantage is digital twins having over existing CAFMs and BMS? That's the first question. And the second question, is there a way of semantically representing data from digital twins so that the different systems have the same understanding of the data? Matt, is that a question? Is that the first question for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having a crack at that one. So, I mean, yes, this is the kind of bones of things. We do have a lot of data on sites. Okay, they might be on legacy information systems. We might have BMS systems. We might have CAFM systems in play. But at the moment, they're all kind of insular. They're all in their own little eggs, and they're not really talking to each other, which is obviously relating to the second question as well. Now, obviously, the point of the digital twin is that all these data sources come together and reactions happen from the digital twin to input back into these systems for something to happen to the building. But until we can get them on the same, almost on the same language to a certain extent, there is the aspect of the technology side of the way one talks to another. But to be honest, that isn't a huge issue, especially with standard formats like MQTT data, etc. But we've got to link up these things. They can't just be on their own. You can't just have your BMS system talking on its own, doing its own thing, because that's not a digital twin. It's just a data set. Even if it only feeds one way, we've got to obviously run both ways. So yeah, getting back to the kind of common language element between all these systems, there is standard formats as it is now, and they can link up as we're seeing through our ecosystem. And the best bit is a lot of these providers, such as like Trend and Maximo and stuff, they want to be able to collaborate. They want to share their data. They want to bring data in from other places because it makes their offering better as well. So the commercial aspect isn't so much that I can sit in my own little eggshell and just control my own little data. By opening it up and being able to converse with other platforms, you can get more out of your own system as well. So a bit lengthy there, I apologise. Kieran, do you want to add on to that?
If I may, Matt, yeah, just to tag on the back of that, in terms of what advantages I'm starting to see already, I talked about temperature sensors that we effectively bolt on or fix onto water pipes. Managing a big hospital, this is probably one of the most challenging areas, is Legionella control and making sure we're flushing outlets regularly. A traditional way of doing that would be L8 software of some description, where we manually file flushing returns to say they're done. Anyone can file them though ultimately and say they've done the returns, but with sensor data on every single basin and shower, approximately costs about £50 per outlet, so quite cheap to roll out, and that'll last you 10 years, that sensor. It allows you to see whether they're actually being flushed. One case that I'll go into as far as I can is we've had a ward where we have had some issues with that. It's been managed through point of use filters to ensure it's safe. But obviously they're very expensive. We've been trying to get to the bottom of this issue, which is intermittent Legionella samples coming back positive. There's been no rhyme nor reason to that. We've been through so many different things, and actually just fitting these sensors, wireless sensors, recently started to show us it's a flushing issue just on showers, and then we're starting to grow things we shouldn't be, which are going back into the wash basins. And we have spent a lot of money on filters. That's one example, point of use filters to ensure our patients are safe off the back of that. And now we've got that solid data to go and start to train staff internally and make sure that isn't an issue moving forward. So I think that's one example where having good data is very useful, and that's probably over and above what you'd have with a CAFM system, I would say.
Okay.
I'd feel like sorry, Kieran. The BMS and IoT are great sources of data, but in terms of events management, so BMS will control your BMS. IoT will control or are looking at specific assets. You need, in my humble opinion, need to look at that as part of your CAFM. It's your CAFM solution that's going to be controlling your events. Who am I going to send? Why am I sending them? Am I sending the right person at the right time? Are they qualified? Are they following compliance? And then also as part of your CAFM, then you start getting to the section where you start looking at, have I got the right spares, Omar? You know, am I ordering it from the right supplier, etc. So I don't know. I know BMS do events management as well, but that's for a quite close community. If you're looking, Kieran, I mean, I'm sure you know every hospital's the same. You've probably got within your trust that consists of several hospitals. You're going to have multiple BMS systems. So again, you're looking at pockets of data and you're looking at different teams. You know, how can you standardize all that? You won't be standardize the BMS, but you can standardize the data coming off the BMSs and standardize the data coming off your IoT that's hooked onto your now intelligent assets. That feeds into your CAFM, and your CAFM can have that single view of the world, of your whole estate, and it decides who am I going to send, when am I going to send them. It's all auditable and traceable and complianceable and whatever else. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Henry, I hope that answers your question, or questions rather. I know there was a bit of coverage on both there. I've got one thing I will say is we've got a question that's from Alex. It's an observation and a question, I suppose. Great insights, guys. I'm currently working on a PhD research entitled Digital Twins and Enabling Lean Strategic Facility Management at University of Salford. I think what Alex is looking for is a bit of assistance, and if it's okay with everybody, I can share some details if that works for everybody. Alex, I hope that's okay. Leave that with me. The next question I've got here concerns carbon net zero. I think a topic that's going to affect everybody going forwards. I'm going to give this to you, Kieran, but let me just ask the question first. What does the panel believe is the primary benefit on the digitisation of assets, such as the compliance of carbon net zero? Kieran.
So from my side of things, obviously I'm coming at it from the BMS aspect, because that's my sort of, I suppose if you were called an expert background, that's what I'm most familiar with. But however we get that information back to the digital twin, we're installing new chillers. If I give you an example, we're doing some new chiller installs at present. It's amazing how many chillers you buy that don't calculate their COP, a coefficient of performance, essentially. So you can't actually work out whether they're running efficiently. And I'm sure everyone's seen this. Sometimes you'll have chillers or boilers fitted, and they won't be controlled properly, and they'll actually be really inefficient. So good example of where digitization of that data can be used to good effect was in my previous job. We had 4 gas boilers, 800 kilowatts running about 500, if I remember, flats across multiple 6-flat buildings in our estate, and they were never set up to control efficiently from the start. And by monitoring them, digital information coming off them, we were able to save 30% off our gas bill by tweaking the control methodology, and that was hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, just one simple change. And we would have never known about that had we not been monitoring how efficiently those boilers were running using our BMS substitute digital twin, and whenever you bring that information back to. So as I say, it's an area I'm hugely passionate about, because I've seen the savings. And if I speak for the NHS for a second, like all the other public sector organisations, we're going to have more cost efficiencies to make over time, I would imagine. But yet we're like many other organisations, we're probably not quite as good as we need to be with regards to energy management, and this represents a huge opportunity for both public and private sector. I firmly believe that.
Indeed, yeah, indeed. I might just add, we've got a project. Just let me say this, Graham. We've got a project on the table at COMIT at the moment, and that was one of the things that cropped up this week. So I'll share details of that later, and I may even come back, Kieran, and consult with you on that. Sorry, Graham, carry on.
Yeah, it was only a small point sort of linked to the carbon net zero agenda, but for me, how we manage legacy assets from a digital perspective, really, to link to carbon net zero is is how we get to predictive asset management, smart materials management, using optimizing the maintenance. If we can get a better view of that and start to predict and trend things moving forward rather than looking back historically, that optimizes everything and will support the net zero agenda as well.
Indeed, indeed. I've got another question here. It's what do you think the backlog of digitisation is going to cost, and how much value is locked up until it is done? If there's some client examples, Paul, you're smiling. I'm going to give that to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Stuart.
Is that okay? I thought that was an excellent question.
Yeah. I guess it's how long's the piece of string? Are we talking about an estate? Are we talking about UK wide? Are we talking? What I would say, it doesn't have to cost excessive amounts of money. What I would do is, number one, is stop the rot. If you look at digitization or creating that digital twin for a new build project today, and you do it properly, the costs aren't going to be enormous, because if you do it right on day one and you identify your outcomes, and BIM's supposed to do this, but unfortunately, I think the operations and the FM guys are just not involved enough when it comes to new build projects. Stuff is thrown over the wall at handover phase. But if they can play a bigger role in that smart building concept early in the REBA stages, early in design and build, and ensure that flow of data goes from system to system to system to system, you will end up with your digital twin, because you'll have the Revit model, or you can do some retrofit scanning if you want, but you can piggyback on your retrofit model. You can have that data that's joined up, and when you hit handover, you've got all the data that you can surface through your model, and et voila, as they say over here. So it doesn't have to be excessive amounts of money. Where it does get costly is if you don't look at it during design and build phase, and then you try and retrofit, which of course 95% of the NHS or states is about is a retrofit. Then it's going to get a bit more costly, but you don't have to do top end laser scanning with 0.5 mil precision, whatever. Do some of the photogrammetry stuff that the guys have been talking about today. Do it in one room, prove the return of investment, and then do a second room, and then do a floor, and then do a wing. So somebody said earlier, I think it was the Halton boys, start small, think big, start small, scale fast. So it's not about the cost, it's about the return of investment. And if you do just follow some basic guidelines, don't go for the Ferrari, go for the skateboard, and then the bike, and then the Mini, and then you'll hit your Ferrari. Yeah, that's how I would do it. So it's not about how much or whatever. We can't not do anything. Sustainability is not about heat pumps and LEDs or solar paneling. That's only going to get you so far. It's going to be about digitization. We've got to, and start bleeding in e-procurement and start bleeding other. Get your data right. I'll stop now.
I'm sure we can keep going. We're just coming out to the end of time, and I'm just conscious.
I just want to add on to that one. Sorry, really key. Everybody, you might have your own goal for your digitization process, for whether it's CNZs, costs and everything. But the thing is, there's a normal dirty word that's in construction here that isn't a dirty word in digitization. That's unforeseen. Now, in construction, BIM was to try and get rid of the unforeseen, so coordinate everything better and it all goes in great. Now, the thing is, there's going to be a lot of unforeseens in the data that we capture in, especially legacy estates, because as soon as we got that data, we'll realize patterns that we didn't realize we were even looking for in the first place. It just ends up having even more returns than we expected in the first place. So there's like no loss almost, to be honest. So sorry.
That's all right. I'm just going to move on to, if I can just get the next slide up on the screen. We've got the questions now. I don't know whether you want to get through these because we're just about on time. I have got a few slides to close out and a few announcements. But do you want to say anything, Matt? Do you want to say anything in respect? I mean, I'm saying thank you very much for everybody that's participated. But do you want to say anything to the questions? I know you've not seen them.
I think it wasn't what I expected, to be honest. I'm glad there is more developed understanding of the use of reality capture, because I say a lot of interactions that I have, they're like, oh, we want a building information model of full Revit of our estates. Like, why? I mean, all you need to do is know what you've got. You don't need a full thing. It's like, well, maybe you just need the wet system. So that's good to know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was really a feel for where the audience is as the questions were set up. So that gives you a bit of an insight. So hey, listen, I'm going to say thank you again for that. I will share that with everybody. I'm also just going to close out the webinar, because I say we're at time. I want to say thanks to the sponsors, to Virgin Media O2 and Snugs. Yes, I've had a number of questions already. Is the recording available? Yes, it is. I post that out on the website, YouTube, as soon as the thing has stopped recording. I also want to say the next webinar we've got is in 2 weeks, and that's going to be delivered by Adam, who's on the call. What has building things right ever done for us? Lovely. I like that. So please tune in for that one. And the other thing I need to say as well is, I should have said this at the beginning, we've COMIT's got a community day. Everybody that's on the call, you're very welcome to attend. Just scan that QR code and register. We've got a superb agenda. It's our 3rd community day this year. I know a number of people who are on the call are attending, but for those that haven't seen this, please scan that, and you're very welcome. And let's leave that for a second. The only other thing to say now is thanks to you guys for coming on. Wonderful presentation. Thanks, Matt, for putting it all together. It's definitely happy hour. Yeah, thanks for the questions. Thanks to the guys on the floor, in the audience, the delegates that have turned up. Thank you very much for your interaction, and I hope you've enjoyed it. As I say, the recording will be available shortly. If anybody's got an interesting topic they'd like to propose for a webinar, just drop me a mail. I'm quite happy to have a chat and take it forward to production. So I would say nothing more other than round the table, starting from Matt. Is there anything you want to add?
No, thank you very much for hosting, Stuart. Really appreciate it.
Oh, great, thank you. Kieran?
No, nothing from me other than say thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to come on.
Cheers. Anthony?
All good from me. Thank you very much for having me. Cheers.
Brilliant. Thanks for coming. Graham?
I just really enjoyed the session, so appreciate everybody's time, and thanks to Stuart for organising.
Cheers. Omar?
No, thank you, Matt, for inviting me. Thank you, Stuart. It's been great.
Pleasure. And Paul?
Yep, same from me. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, panel. Thank you, audience.
Brilliant. Well, listen, the only other thing left to do now is have a great weekend, and we'll see you all soon.
Yes,
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Guys, thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.